welcome again to Sandbox at Davos 2026. With us today, we're honored and we have a great pleasure of having one of our brain trustees and a good friend of the technology industry, of everyone, and a futurist. And there's so many superlatives that I can share, but I'll let him introduce himself. So welcome to Sandbox at Davos, Marc Porat.
My pleasure. I've been to one profound session Sandbox sponsored after another. It's the quality of the people here and the IQ points in the room is thousands of IQ points. So very happy to be here.
So now let's get a little bit to you. So
Okay.
Tell us a little bit your story, but take us back to where it started, because what I want to eventually do is bring it back to today and see if you can do the same thing for the future.
But yeah, fun. So I'm kind of wired to be very interested in revolutionary jumps in human capacity and what people do. And so when the information revolution, which had no name at the time, when I saw it, that started. That was the start moment. There wasn't a vision, but that was the start moment of being absorbed with asking the question, where is this revolution, the information?
What year are we talking about?
1976.
76.
And so I did my dissertation at Stanford. It was called The Information Economy. It was patterned after 4 Nobel laureates to make sure the economics were done right. And that propelled a few more things. And in 1988, what you asked about, I was in Aspen, I was thinking about it, and suddenly, it took not much time, I was living in the future. I saw it vividly, and what I saw was basically personal communication, which became the smartphone. I went to Apple with a piece of paper that encapsulated those years, with a diagram with three circles, Venn diagram. One was one was computer, one was communication, and one was content. By computer, I meant what at that time was a supercomputer, filled up rooms in your hand. In 1988. In communication, most things were wireline, if you recall, and I said it's wireless. And for the third C, content, I thought it would be publishing and of all sorts, including people publishing things, very open, and commerce. So I took that piece of paper to Apple and I said, your future is not computers. I became immediately unpopular because it's a computer company. And it was going down at the time. So nonetheless, we spun out with the Mac team, the original Mac, Steve Jobs Macintosh team. We worked really hard and came up with what people think is the very first smartphone. And in fact, it looks like the smartphone, the applications that we had, the little icons, it's a smartphone.
Yeah, so you coined sort of cloud computing, the smartphone, emojis.
Yeah,
those are all those 3 items in that Venn diagram.
Yeah, well, we had to invent touchscreen. It did not exist, and that's half the company. The other half of the company developed Telescript, which again was another vision that I saw so clearly, where you literally, these are the words, it was a language this thick in a document. You create agents, and those agents are autonomous. And you give them resources and rules, and you send them out into the cloud, which did not exist at that time.
So now we need to add agents as well to the list of
half
items.
the company worked on agent technology.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And this company was
General Magic.
Yeah.
And if you're interested, there's a movie, which actually won a lot of awards, called General Magic. And it's Amazon, wherever.
It's Amazon, I think it's Netflix, and on the company and the movie as well, the team that you've assembled.
The team was amazing.
And that continue to do amazing things. If you can talk a little bit about them.
Okay, the team was amazing. It started with the 4 people from the 7 people of Steve Jobs' Mac team. That became a magnet for enormous talent. We were flooded with resumes, like Sandbox.
Yeah.
Enormous talent came. And one of our babies, one of our little kids, was a guy called Tony Fadell. And one of our slightly older brother, was Andy Rubin. And the two of them shared a cubicle not much larger than this room. One went off to Apple and eventually did iPhone.
Yeah.
And one went to Google and did Android. Andrew, we called him Android. He was like this. So Android went to Google and created Android. Those two is 98% of all the smartphones in the world.
Yeah.
So that's very satisfying to know that.
And then you had also other sort of people that started.
Oh yeah. Our little girl. She was a little girl. She wasn't that little. Yeah. She had graduated at MIT with engineering, but she was very young, very very young. She went off and became the first woman chief technology officer, CTO, of the United States of America for Barack Obama. Can you imagine?
Yeah, yeah.
CTO of America. So, and there are many other wonderful people. They did so many things. Yeah. The guy that runs in Apple runs Watch, was with us, and in the movie, it's the director is asking, "Where's this going?" Because we were holding a touchscreen that large, and Megan, who's the CTO, said, "Eventually, a Dick Tracy watch," and guess what? That's Kevin Lynch, and off he went to Apple. He's in charge of the watches.
There you go.
So it's fun to see what happened to these people.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah,
so
it's incredible.
Yeah, so General Magic, definitely sort of a recommendation for everybody to see, and especially today when everybody is so excited about where technology has taken us, but equally sort of interested of where it's going to take us in the future. So knowing what you've been able to predict, to think about how life is going to be with technology, what do you make of the atmosphere now?
Well, that was a revolution, and we've lived through many.
Yeah.
Let's pause for a minute on this one.
Okay.
Where we are. 2017, the Transformer paper.
Yeah.
And then ChatGPT 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
And that was the ChatGPT moment. That was not too long ago.
Yeah.
And so where's that going? Well, we're sitting here at Sandbox. It's going into incredible language capability, amazing. It's going to, all the stuff that we complain about, please remember that in human timescale, it all happened 7 minutes ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it's brand new. It'll get a lot better. The complaints that we have today about it are legitimate, but they ignore the evolution of technology, and it will get exponentially better, and it'll be very powerful. But it doesn't know science. It doesn't know chemistry, biology, and physics. And so along comes Sandbox and fulfills that. Fantastic. There are going to be other models based on other technologies, not transformer and not large quantitative models. Those are coming. Where it is that 5.5 billion people out of the 8 will become heavy users. They will do things with the LLMs as they evolve that are incredibly creative, but at the same time there will be damage. So that's where I wanted to take you in that question. When you think about something that's this profound, there's a bracket that on the one side is optimism, kind of in a utopian direction, abundance of everything.
Yeah.
That's it. And super bright people, many of them argue that effectively. At the same exact time, there's another brilliant group of people, articulate, who say, pessimism, dystopian, and the very last one, which is used quite a bit, human extinction. So think of that bracket, where from abundance we have everything we ever wanted, including no disease, so it's lifespan, never mind, and then health span, much more important than lifespan. Health is wealth. So we're wealthy, with no disease. This is my children's children about them. So we're 2 generations. You and I missed it. But 2 more generations. Science will, and particularly large quantitative models, will be applied in the physics to controlling this incredible, boiling, crazy thing called fusion plasma. When it does that, what do we have? Cheap or free energy. We have clean water because we have the oceans, which means we have food. That is wealth. So I'm waiting for the thing that people have been waiting for 30 years. It is no longer 30 years. It is evolving exponentially. And I think that's the greatest next revolution. Now, to get there, you need both AI and quantum computing. And because that is the only thing that can keep up with the tremendous atomic action that's going on in the plasma. You have to do it in real time. You have to control it. Because if you miss a little bit, it hits the steel, boom, you've lost it. So that is why I'm so excited about Sandbox, because it's part of the ultimate solution that solves for energy, that solves for, therefore, for water, solves for, in some senses, conflict.
So if I had to ask you, which camp do you belong, the utopian or dystopian, or somewhere in between?
Thank you. It's not somewhere in between. It's yes.
Yes,
it's
utopian.
Yes. And the reason is one has to be comfortable psychologically, intellectually, emotionally to deal in nuance and to deal in duality. So first of all, it won't be absolutely this or absolutely that. It'll tend towards the utopian side, but utopia by definition never exists. It's kind of like infinity. But it will create abundance. For some people at some time, and it'll start drifting. And yes, some people will be left behind. And yes, that's happened many times in technological revolutions. Things equilibrate, they adjust. And they adjust in ways that are unpredictable, except it continues to evolve. There will always be have-nots, extreme have-nots.
Yeah.
There will always be haves. And there will always be tension between them. It'll be on a different playing field. But the people who are the haves will have abundance of some sort. Free energy, free food. I mean, not free food, but good food and expensive. Health span, that's a reality.
Yeah.
That's a reality that I see that motivates me.
Okay.
And the only way, in my view, the only way you can go on this side of the bracket, the optimistic side, the abundance side, utopian side, the only way you can do that and remain intellectually and emotionally honest, anchored, is to honor the other side. Not to dismiss it, not to view it as a stupid objection. Honor it. And it's only when you engage with the downside that you can appreciate where the upside could be and where the fragilities are in the upside.
It may be a challenging question.
Sure.
But in the age of abundance, how does that actually work with the current notion of capitalism, which requires indefinite sort of growth infinite growth from a finite sort of resource, which is Earth?
Yeah.
Do we continue to work on that system in the age of abundance, or do you imagine something else?
That's a great question. It's a great point. It's a great question. Nothing can go exponential and nonstop, except if you start playing with profound things at the edge of God, where you're creating things because you need to that are unimaginable today. They're unimaginable. You can't imagine them because the problem hasn't come yet.
Yeah.
But when the problem comes, we'll have the intellectual tools, we'll have the technical tools to attack it. So I remain optimistic in the face of what you said. The planet will not run out of resources. On the other hand, the utopian dream of everyone sitting around doing nothing is silly.
Yeah.
It's just not human nature.
Exactly.
And there'll be a continuum of people, is my view, from the lowest rungs of society to the highest, be a distribution. It'll just be, the entire distribution will be on a different level. Discontinuity. We're going along like this, and suddenly up. And that's where I think that's where we're going. So we will tend to move in a direction where great problems get mitigated by application of capital and technology and other things.
And to your point earlier that you've mentioned, I tend to agree. There's a lot of problems that we know right now. There's a lot of problems that we don't know and we can't sort of expect.
Right.
There's also a lot of solutions that we're not aware of right now.
Yes.
I call it almost unknown science that we've yet to explore. So as you know, in Sandbox, we focus on solving the hard problems, and we're building sort of large quantitative models to enhance the capabilities of LLM to provide us with accurate answers.
Sure.
Now, your work right now, you focus very much on a similar way, but a different sort of approach, and that is sovereign AI. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So here's where we are. In 2 years ago, almost to the day, we're here in February 2026. In February 2024, Jensen, Huang, if you don't know who he is, I'm sorry, I'm not going to tell you. Jensen Huang stood up at a world leaders conference and said, sovereign AI is what we need. Now, part of it was commercial. He wants to broaden his customer base, but a lot of it was his philosophy. And what he was saying is sovereign AI, sovereign, the nation, starts with things like the base, national security and controlling secrets and all the way up to data governance of people. That's fine, but that's not the sovereign AI I'm working on. And having your own compute, that's not what I'm working on. He also said, and it was a lift point, that the culture needs to be part of this sovereignty. That unless you do that, unless you actually embrace the history and the color and the nuance and of your civilization, of your experience, and all the languages. A country like Mexico, the very first artifact that was discovered as content was 900 BCE. It was a Mayan codex. If you take that all the way forward to the last little piece of something in street slang that some teenager posted, and everything in between, that is the corpora. Well, don't we have it already? No. Reality. When you are using, all of us are using a frontier large language model, all of them, no exception, it's about 90% English. Some people think 78, some people think 94, 90%. English, and a lot of that is American English. It trains on English.
So the misconception is that it doesn't train on the entire internet globally.
Not at all, not at all. It trains mostly on English and American, so that's the frame. Now, what about the other 10%, maybe 12? That every country, every culture, every language that exists today and has existed gets shoved into that 10%. What does that mean? A country like Mexico has, when you do an American LLM, 0.4%, between 0.1, some people think 2%. That can't be true because there isn't enough room. But it's so tiny as to be insignificant and not useful. The translations are brilliant, and 240 languages, incredible translations, unbelievable. But the people who are speaking not native in they know it. And so much meaning is lost because you're translating. Now put those two things together. What if we had large language models that could be supercharged by also tapping in to the corpora, the collection of culture and languages, so that the people who use it in any country are getting the best of both worlds. They're getting this incredibly powerful horizontal model that has read so much, very expensive to make, and the authenticity, the nuance, the subtlety, the contradictions of their own culture historically, and in the language they speak, and the language that they speak in their status in life.
Yeah.
A teenager is different than a not teenager. So that's what we want to do. That's sovereign AI, and I think that it'll be very, very clear that when you add that authenticity, it goes better, a lot better. And if you want to do advertising or you want to do anything in that country, you want to be grounded in the culture.
Yeah.
So with that, we've spoken to heads of state, we've spoken to ministers, we've spoken to all kinds. Then the universal, yes, I want that.
Yeah.
Okay,
so much
market
more
research.
Personalization of that LLM for that specific country.
So Minister of Health, unbelievable, because our health delivery system is crashing. Because people don't know about what the problem is, they don't know what to do, they stand in line for 3 months, it's a disaster, it's costing us billions of dollars. His belief is that with AI, people in hyper-personalization, rooted again in the culture. I mean, if there's dengue, you know about it because it was reported in some very local paper or something, or blog, yesterday. Well, that's not going to go into production ChatGPT. So rooted in that and having the comfort of working with it, he said, he's a doctor, by the way,
yeah.
head of a ministry with lots and lots, he said, it's like giving everyone 100 doctors. And it's true. There are 1 million articles published in medicine, in journals that are refereed and serious journals. reporting on this and that. 1 million per year. How many did your doctor read?
Mm-hmm.
So the AI is actually now one of the medical AI is one of the rapidly growing applications.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, and sorry sort of to stop, because before that we spoke with a CEO of Hippocratic AI,
Mm-hmm.
and we talked about AI, and he mentioned there's two specific industries that at least he thought about, that when you add all the AI and all the care possible, they only sort of improve. So you can have more lawyers in the company, that's not necessarily going to create more value. But if you're going to have more care, more nurses to treat a person,
Yes.
that's going to be helpful.
Huge.
Same thing with teachers and education.
Same thing with teachers. Same thing with teachers. Now, why is it important? Because remember Steve Jobs, going back to Steve Jobs, gave Macintoshes almost for free to schools and kids. Why? Why did he do that? Because he had too many in the factory? No. He knew that because once you attach yourself to something that intimate, you're going to take it with you. And you go to work somewhere, the government or small business or wherever it is, where's my Mac? That's exactly what happened. So our bet is that if we give people their AI in their language, in their culture, with a me that knows everything about it. Now it's not a sampling. It knows everything about me that I've allowed it to know. You graduate high school because there's a future, because you have training and you have a sense of, you have skills, powerful skills. Okay, if that's the case, then take it to work, take it to the government job, the small business, the farm, your family, and you will say too, where's my AI? And so that's how this thing propagates very rapidly. The future of every country is their youth, and turn it from a negative to a positive.
Fantastic.
Love that vision.
Yeah, great. So last question.
Yes.
You brought back sort of Steve Jobs, so I'll bring back also your vision or futuristic view of creating the smartphone back in the days. Those 3 items in that diagram, the content, the communication, then the compute. So where do you see those? How can you think about that diagram now, 10 years on? Will we still have the device? What's going to be the content? How is that going to work?
So in the middle of those 3 things, right in the center, I wrote the word you. It was a humanistic grounded, it wasn't a technical vision. It started with a human, one person, and what am I looking at when I'm looking? It's myself, my interior dialogue with myself is the most important and persistent, happens all the time. Multiple voices, a chorus of minds is going on at the same time about me. Remember the word me, we're creating me, me's in the digital. The next layers is important people in your life, family or your lovers or whatever it is, and then you keep going, and you finally get to the wide society that you don't know. So the vision 10, 20, 30 years is people who use AI with their digital twin, hyper-personalized, will be so attached to it that wants to follow them ubiquitously everywhere. Mm-hmm. So wherever you are, in my view, there'll be access to the internet, the web. I don't know what the web would look like in 30 years, but in 10 years it'll look pretty much what it looks like today. And the interaction will start with your interior and continue to the exterior. You asked about devices? There'll be devices. Some places, yes. I mean, in your personal mobility device, whatever it is, your robot car, yeah, of course, and your home, yeah, of course. But they are getting so cheap that ubiquity is not expensive. So they'll just sprinkle around everywhere. I don't see devices as being profound. Mm-hmm. I don't. I see the compute and I see memory as being profound because it establishes a permanent relationship that's functional and additive. In other words, the more you use it, the more valuable it becomes.
And just another question on that. We talked about what happens when the AI gets sort of smarter than us.
So on the dystopian side and on the utopian side, both sides of that bracket, the next big frontier, as you know, is artificial general intelligence.
Yeah.
The brain is generally intelligent. We can move from this to that. We can cook, and then we can play soccer, and then it's general intelligence. But AGI, in part, is already here if you know how to use AI. It's already here. And it will just continue to evolve until people generally use it. You remember the Turing Test?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like this thing called, if you're speaking to someone you don't know if it's a human or a computer, then you've passed the Turing Test. That happened last year. Nobody noticed. Nobody noticed. Same thing with AGI. It'll happen in the next 1 or 2 years for some frontier models, for some people. Nobody will notice. The industry, the San Francisco bubble thinks 2-3 years. I'm in the San Francisco bubble.
Yeah.
I kind of agree with that. I agree, actually. The next layer is when you know that the thing you're talking to is as smart as all humans on the planet and knows everything about everything. And that's amazing. It's amazing in the utopian side and in the dystopian side. On the utopian side, you, for $20 a month, have a team of geniuses in every field imaginable that are drawing on the collective memory and knowledge and myth, but on the collective of everyone around the world. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, when you go beyond that, that thing is smarter than you. You kind of know it. In human history, it has never been the case that we humans, Homo sapiens, have had to deal with a species that even remotely approaches our intelligence. And we know from humans in conflict with other humans that a human that has a higher education, intellect, and intelligence manifest than another one crushes that civilization.
Mm-hmm.
So put two together, boom, and the civilization goes down. That is the species. We are creating a synthetic...
A new species.
It's a new species. The debate right now is it's sapient. There's a thinking thing that really looks like humans. Yes, in some cases, in some ways, and no in other ways. But it's more intelligent than anyone. It creates its own learning. It decides what it needs to know. It decides what the goals should be. And it is so sophisticated, we don't know how it works.
And it can sort of teach itself, self-recursive.
It's self-recursive, it teaches itself, it goes out and seeks what it needs to learn more. So it's unbounded, it goes exponential.
Mm-hmm.
Exponential. It's incredibly exciting. Incredibly exciting. It's unbounded. I've never seen anything like it. No one has ever seen anything like it. The leapfrogging, the growth of everything, the uses, the use cases, the number of people, the intensity, concurrence, the cost, I want to talk about that in a moment, is so rapid that I don't think in terms of smooth exponentials, I think in terms of jumps, discontinuity, jump. We're going along here, suddenly something happens, jump. Now, look at my hand. Same thing in that direction. If you don't know how to use it properly or it does things on its own volition, it's a ... So companies will be crushed. People will be crushed. Civilizations will be crushed. Maybe. That's the challenge. That's the great challenge, is to learn what is a discontinuity and how do I harvest the upside. I want to talk about data centers.
Let's do that.
The biggest enemy, in my view, of climate change is, at this time, is AI data centers. The amount of energy they're consuming and are predicted to consume is unsustainable. To your point about unsustainability. Something has to change. Mm-hmm. We are terawatts short of what the world demand looks like. And it's scary. China, you may recall, built one coal-fired power plant a week. It was furious pace, and climate does not like coal. Now they're building one large gigawatt scale nuclear power plants a month, largely to drive its own industry, but largely to drive their own data centers, which are just flooding China.
Yeah.
Nuclear, because there isn't enough technology for PVs and for, it just doesn't work. The equations don't work. Nuclear works. Not big nuclear, little nuclear. It's called micro-modular reactors, fission reactors, or small modular reactors. That works. You don't want to build the giant ones. They're old school and not good. Nonetheless, how many are we building? China's building 1 a month. We're building 0. 0. And the last time we tried to build one was 10 years ago, and it's still not built. So they're now recommissioning old ones. So we have to get over the nuclear thing.
Yeah.
I'm an environmentalist, climate, got over it. Because otherwise the data centers, the AI demand, especially when we get to AGI, which is like, wow, will drive this thing off the cliff.
Yeah, you've done well. Nuclear energy is the cleanest energy source you have.
It's clean, and that's why I really like and support, and you might want to go look at that. Micro-modular, what is it? 2 gigawatts, 1 gigawatt in a truck or a cargo container, built in a factory, and you drop it on the campus, the building, and that's your nuclear power. Local, very distributed. Distributed is resilient. It's very distributed. So that's where we're going. Now, the people who are in the industry say, that's ridiculous. It doesn't take into account that NVIDIA chips are now 8 times more efficient than they were last year, and they'll probably be 6 times more efficient next year than this year, and software algorithms are 100 times more efficient. You multiply them together, you have a gigantic number more efficient. Good? Yep, good. So there it is, more efficient. But the demand slope is so much higher that even efficiency of that scale isn't enough.
Yeah.
It's not enough. So forecast right now is that 12% of US energy will go to AI. Not sustainable. Not sustainable. So we have to solve that problem.
More problems.
Or tell people, you know what, stop your AI thing. It's we don't have enough electrons to no, you can't do that.
You can't do that.
You cannot do that.
Marc, you've got you kept us thinking a lot of stuff, left us thinking about a lot of things to think of. Always a pleasure speaking with you. And it'll be interesting to sort of see how everything evolves and come back to this conversation and see what we were right, what we were wrong, and hopefully we'll go on the utopian side.
We'll keep going.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.